They came in fire. They didn't come with words. They came with fire. At 3:47 Greenwich Mean Time, hundreds of alien ships emerged from fold space over Earth's orbit. Telescopes caught the shift, radar went blind, and by the time any military satellite tried to report, it was already gone, vaporized by beams of concentrated light. The Drexel Dominion had arrived, and they weren't looking for diplomacy. New York, London, Tokyo, Johannesburg. No warning, no demands. Just destruction. By dawn, 500 million people were dead. Major Elena Ward was in retirement when the sky fell. Once part of Earth's Joint Special Operations Command, she had traded war zones for a quiet cabin in upstate New York. But the explosion that flattened Manhattan was visible even from her hill. The shockwave shattered her windows. The fireball lit the sky for hours. 2 days later, she was back in uniform, this time in the mud with farmers, mechanics, and terrified college students holding rifles. The Drexel broadcasted their ultimatum on every remaining frequency. Earth is now Drexel territory. Resistance will be met with eradication. Surrender, and you may live to save. But Earth wasn't built for surrender. Certainly not after what had been done. Elena led one of the first counterstrikes from the ruins of Syracuse. A Drexel scout craft had landed nearby to establish a perimeter node. Its guards, tall, reptilian bipeds in gleaming biomechanical armor, had posture and confidence like they'd never known fear. They learned quickly. Using Cold War-era missile parts and garage-built EMP cannons, Elena's group ambushed the Drexel while they were calibrating ground sensors. The explosion tore the craft open, and humans swarmed in with Molotovs and machetes. It was brutal, messy, but effective. After the smoke cleared, Elena stood over the wreckage of an alien drone and said what would become the rallying cry of the resistance. They came to conquer. We gave them a war. Across the globe, others followed suit. Old armies reformed. Nations stopped bickering and started coordinating. Civilian engineers hacked captured alien comms. Prisoners broke out and turned their chains into weapons. Even street gangs turned their turf wars into ambushes against Drexel patrols. The aliens were efficient, strong, and technologically superior, but they weren't prepared for a species that had spent thousands of years perfecting the art of war. They couldn't grasp why humans would fight even when outnumbered, why we would choose to die free rather than live enslaved. The Drexel called it madness. We called it survival. By the end of the first month, the Drexel controlled Earth's skies, but not the ground. And for the first time since the invasion began, they started losing patrols they couldn't explain, outposts that never reported back, and entire units swallowed by forests, cities, and mountains. Humanity was wounded, bleeding, but very much alive, and very, very angry. Blood in the soil. The Drexel thought resistance would burn itself out. Instead, it spread like wildfire. What began with scattered uprisings turned into coordinated strikes. From the frozen forests of Canada to the deserts of North Africa, human resistance networks began sharing intelligence, tactics, and stolen alien tech. Makeshift war rooms formed in bunkers, caves, and even abandoned shopping malls. Communication lines were rebuilt with salvaged antennas and jury-rigged satellite links. Major Elena Ward's unit, codenamed Echo Vulture, became a template for other cells. Her team had grown from 12 ragged survivors to nearly 200 scavengers, fighters, and field engineers. They had no uniforms, no air support, no mercy. They operated out of the hollowed remains of a Drexel crawler they disabled with a truck bomb. Inside, they housed a captured translator drone, reprogrammed to decode alien signals. One day, it intercepted something different. Elena huddled over the screen as lines of Drexel script translated into chilling English. Resistance is intensifying. Phase Omega authorized. Sterilize high-resistance zones. Civilian casualties irrelevant. Sterilize. That meant orbital bombardment. Again, they weren't just here to conquer anymore. They were preparing to cleanse. Elena called a war council. 7 resistance leaders from around the globe, patched in through glitchy video feeds. She delivered the message with cold fury. We're not fighting for survival anymore, she told them. We're fighting to deny them victory at any cost. If they want blood, we drown them in it." The council agreed. That night, across the globe, resistance cells launched simultaneous attacks, not just on Drexery troops, but on supply chains, forward stations, and fuel processes. They used sharpened steel, acid rigs, pulse jammers, and fire. So much fire. In the Brazilian jungle, commandos lured a Drexery hovercraft into a dead-end canyon and collapsed it with dynamite. In rural China, villagers led a whole garrison into a rice paddy seeded with buried artillery shells. In Chicago, Elena's team blew up a Drexery food replicator factory using a forklift and 20 gallons of diesel. The aliens fought back, of course. Their retaliation was swift and brutal. But they were bleeding. More importantly, they were confused. Their predictive models, based on previous conquests, had failed. Humans weren't breaking. They were adapting. The Drexery began making mistakes. Patrols ventured too far. Officers underestimated ambush zones. Their armor, impressive but rigid, became a liability in Earth's forests and urban ruins. Even Earth's wildlife joined the resistance in ways the aliens couldn't anticipate. A squad of Drexery was mauled to death by grizzly bears in Yellowstone. Another was found shredded in the savannah, the bones picked clean by hyenas. Earth, it turned out, was a death world, and humanity was its apex predator. In the mud, in the smoke, in the blood-soaked soil, the Drexery were learning the truth. Conquering Earth was never going to be easy. It was going to be hell. We break their sky. By month 5, the Drexery weren't expanding anymore. They were digging in. What was supposed to be a swift conquest had become a grinding war of attrition. Their warships still controlled orbit, but Earth's ground had turned toxic, figuratively and, in some places, literally. They had started the invasion as lords of the skies. Now they hid behind force fields, afraid of the ground beneath them. Humanity had done more than fight back. It had adapted. Captured tech was now being reverse-engineered in hidden labs buried deep in mountains and mines. One such lab, codenamed Iron Spire, nestled under an old missile silo in Kazakhstan, had cracked the Drexery's short-range communication protocols. Another, hidden beneath the ruins of Seoul, figured out how to overcharge Drexery plasma cells, turning them into bombs. But the biggest breakthrough came from Echo Vulture. Major Elena Ward's team had recovered a partially intact Drexery shuttle after it crash-landed in Vermont. Most of the alien crew had died on impact. The rest were dealt with by local hunters. Elena didn't want the ship for escape. She wanted it for infiltration. Within weeks, Earth's best minds and hands, mechanics, hackers, even former aerospace engineers, had repurposed the shuttle. They patched the hull with composite scrap, swapped life support systems for human tolerance, and fitted the landing gear with repulsors stolen from a mining drone. The mission was clear. Take the fight off-world. Project Thorn was born, a daring plan to sneak into orbit, infiltrate a Drexery command platform, and cripple it from within. Elena led the team herself. The modified shuttle launched from an abandoned Russian cosmodrome under the cover of Aurora's storms. It ascended without detection, hidden by the same stolen tech they had learned to weaponize. When it reached the orbital platform, it docked like just another supply vessel. Then the real war began. Inside the station, zero-G combat was chaotic and brutal. Drexery soldiers weren't prepared for humans who could twist through weightlessness, use magnetic boots as weapons, and disable pressure seals to create explosive decompression traps. Elena's team planted fusion charges at key structural nodes. As alarms screamed and emergency bulkheads slammed shut, the humans retreated the same way they came. When the charges blew, the Drexery command platform cracked open like a rotting fruit. Chunks of alien alloy and flame dropped into the atmosphere, burning bright over Earth like falling stars. Every human watching from the ground knew what it meant. The tide had turned. The Drexery staggered. Their orbital dominance was no longer guaranteed. For the first time since the invasion began, they were on the defensive in space. In retaliation, the aliens glassed a swath of Central Australia. It was rage, not strategy. That was their second mistake. Because now, humanity wasn't just defending Earth. Now, We were coming for them. Now we hunt. The Drexri were retreating, but not fast enough. After the destruction of their orbital command platform, their fleet fractured. Supply lines failed. Orders fell into chaos. Some ground troops even abandoned their posts, only to be hunted down by local militias and resistance fighters with homemade weapons and centuries-old grudges. But Earth wasn't finished. Not while a single Drexri warship still hung above its sky. The mission was named Operation Iron Requiem. Earth had salvaged enough alien wreckage to cobble together its own strike fleet, a ragtag mix of retrofitted Drexri ships, steel-armored space shuttles, and one stolen asteroid mining rig converted into a kinetic ram. No one pretended it would be easy. The Drexri mothership, Valzurak, was still in orbit, 5 kilometers long and armed with enough firepower to slag a continent. Major Elena Ward stood in the launch bay of their flagship, Red Vela, staring at the enemy ship through a cracked viewport. Her armor was scorched from past fights. Her side still ached from a Drexri plasma wound. But her voice was steady. They wanted a war, she said, addressing the entire fleet through comms. Let's finish it. The battle in orbit was unlike anything humanity had ever fought. Drexri fighters swarmed like hornets, but human pilots fought with grit and unpredictability, slingshotting around debris, using blind spots, even crashing old satellites into enemy cannons. The Red Vela took heavy fire, breaching the mothership. Fires erupted on board. Oxygen levels dropped. Elena's comms were filled with screams and static, but she kept moving, leading a strike team through the shattered corridors of Valzurak. Inside, they faced resistance, elite Drexri warriors with energy shields and blade rifles. But the humans fought with desperation born of vengeance. Every hallway was a graveyard. Every meter paid in blood. Reaching the core chamber, Elena and 2 remaining teammates planted the final fusion charges near the ship's antimatter reactor. The countdown began. A Drexri warlord, massive, armored, snarling, barreled into the chamber. He slashed Elena across the chest, knocking her down. But as he raised his blade for the killing strike, she jammed a detonator into his abdomen and pulled the trigger. The explosion took them both. From the ground, people watched as the mothership split apart, its core a blinding light in the night sky. Cheers erupted from bunkers, forests, shattered cities. Across continents, the message was the same. Earth stood. The invaders didn't. The remaining Drexri fled the system. Not in formation. Not with honor. They ran. In the weeks that followed, Earth's nations re-emerged. Flags were raised again. Cities began to rebuild. Elena Ward's name was spoken across the globe. Statues rose. Songs were written, not because she saved Earth, but because she taught it to fight back. In the final broadcast from the Unified Earth Council, one sentence echoed loud and clear. Let this be a warning to the stars. Earth does not kneel.